Hello, here we are again with Muki Tenenbaum. We are exploring through these videos his philosophy, his disillusionism, and his misalgic theory about human behavior as ways of avoiding or mitigating suffering. And week after week now, we've been using the news, we've been using actual facts as they happen to illustrate this philosophy in a way to help us define certain concepts and arguments. And we are now in mid-April 2021, and we are going to use a bit of news that is more curious maybe than relevant from a worldwide perspective. It has to do with Narendra Modi's visit to Bangladesh. The Prime Minister of India went to Bangladesh. There were riots. People died in these riots. And everywhere we hear arguments about what would have happened, what could have happened if he hadn't gone to Bangladesh, if this death and these riots could have been avoided. With his state visit viewed by some as a provocation. And we are going to take that bit of news, but to try and analyze the type of arguments that arise from them and its significance for disillusionism and for peculiar aspects of the theory in particular. So maybe Muki will tell the story in a little bit more detail, but this is the news we are addressing this week. And we think it's a good example of a type of argument, a type of logical structure that has a lot to do with illusions and with human behavior in general.
Well, the story with Narendra Modi, Florencio, is that Narendra Modi, the Prime Minister of India, went to Bangladesh to visit, and there were 10 people dead, as you say, in riots. But there's a story behind it, which is important. Narendra Modi, he's the head of India's Prime Minister of India, but also a nationalistic governor. He believes in the supremacy, or at least the importance of the Hindi religion in the India, which is the majority. They have a Muslim minority, and this will explain part of what happened with Narendra Modi. On one hand, you have Bangladesh, which is a Muslim country, but the independence of Bangladesh is due to India's fight, to India's war with Pakistan. That was really the reason Bangladesh became independent, is thanks to India. So there is a double thing between Bangladesh and India. Once the Muslim issue, with Narendra Modi being quite aggressive on the religion issue, and on the other hand, of course, the fact that India is the guarantor, or was at least the country that made Bangladesh an independent country, which that happened many years ago, so about 40 years ago. So when Narendra Modi flies to Bangladesh, 10 people died, but he went there to make the relations stronger with a neighbor and probably avoid the war. So when people will come to Narendra Modi, says, if you didn't travel to Bangladesh, these 10 very specific people will be alive. Okay, this is very important, because when you use a counterfactual, what you're doing is you have to talk about somebody, a specific person. Yes, these 10 people would be alive. Yes, but if he wouldn't have gone to Bangladesh, maybe the relations would have gotten worse, and maybe instead of 10 people there will be 1,000 people there. So this is what counterfactuals are. I have something that happened to me in the past, and I argue with the past. Now, this is very different from what I call affactuals, contra-affactuals. I don't know how to say it in English. That this is about the future. Let me give you an example, okay? I have to do this video today, and I decided to go. I had to go to buy some things. I says, will I make it in time? Maybe I will not make it in time, and then I will have to begin later, and maybe the light will not be as good to do this video. So I decided, yes, to go to buy to buy stuff outside and take and by that putting in danger the chance of making this video. This is a very small, very little thing.
Mm.
And that decision is a factual. That means it is in the future. That makes sense. I should deter. I should make a decision, and that decision is between two or three or four or five options. But the options, each one has an outcome, and I will choose the one that has the better outcome. You know, misalgia, running away from suffering, is exactly that. Which one of my options will make me suffer less? If I make the right decision, then I won. And if I make the wrong decision, well, then it was the wrong decision. But when we go to counterfactuals, when I ask the question, Modi fly to India or me going out to buy groceries, the two things when they are already over, when I would say, I should have, when I arrive here, let's say it didn't happen well. I went to the groceries and I got and I'm late, and then the light is not good, then the video is not good, and I will be all the time telling to myself, why would I want to? Couldn't I buy the groceries tomorrow? What do I need to go out to buy groceries today? And it could be even something worse. I could have gone out with the car and maybe run over somebody. He was crossing the street, and I didn't see him, or something, or the person was negligent. Let's say he himself made a mistake, and I ran him over. And even if he doesn't die, let's say he's injured, I will say to myself, I should have stayed home. If I would have stayed home, I wouldn't have not run over him. I didn't need the groceries. Yes. Again, the whole thing. That's a counterfactual. What do you say about this, Florence?
I think I get the general picture. It's, if you are correct, it's very different to ask questions like, what will happen if I do this? What will happen if I do that? Than to ask questions like, what would have happened if I did that? What would have happened if I did this? But in the end, it's the same sort of structure that allows for different alternatives. The point is that in the future, these alternatives are still open. When we go back with this type of thoughts, we pretend as if, and I guess this is an illusion of sorts, we pretend as if the past were as open as the future is, which is not. But my question is, what's the purpose of this type of arguments? Why are there so many? As you said, in large things and petty, because this happens also in everyday life. It's not a matter of arguing what statesmen do in international relationships. This is a very daily, everyday aspect of life, right? What are they doing there? Well, is it just a mixed up? Is it something that we extrapolated somehow from the future into the past, or do they serve a purpose?
I have no doubt that it came from the future and went to the past. That's probably the origin of it. We don't know, of course. There is no archaeology of decisions. Would have been great if we could know. But it makes sense. That's when the human discovered the power of decision, yes, to make a choice. But then you have to repent. You have repentance. You have, I shouldn't have gone, and then to learn something from it. The idea is that you make a mistake and you learn something from this. But in general, this becomes really an obsession. And even if you go away from the individual choices, and again back to the Narendra Modi style, and you have here now in the middle of the pandemic, you have three groups of decisions, and this is, we all know, one that decided to destroy the virus, so zero virus, China, for example, or New Zealand, and then you have countries who decided to live with the virus, yes, a little bit more, a little bit less, some lockdowns and then opening and so forth. And then you have people who just went all open. We know the United States did it for almost all the pandemic, and so did Brazil. And each one of them will say, you see, if you would have done as I did, now you would have much less people dead. Your economy will be open. The Chinese love to say to talk about it. You know that they have all the economy open and everything is great and everything is fantastic. And the Brazilian president says, well, People die, that's life, and that's how we have to live with it, and the economy has to continue to grow. And you have people like different countries. You have the vaccines issue. How they negotiate the vaccine, you should have paid more. The Europe, they say, we talked about it. So this is all counterfactuals on a level that really doesn't have, in which our decision that is not important. But disillusionism is exactly not talking about the illusions. What the illusionary, what the players do, is what we do. And here comes the "I told you so." Look at the finger. I told you so. I told you so is behind most counterfactual. It's people coming to you and tell you, people or even governments, yes, or whoever, or judges or policemen. So, I told you so. You should have done that, this and that. And the "I told you so" is behind the proliferation of counterfactuals. Okay, not only you say to yourself, but people come to you and say to you. Does it make? Do you?
Yes,
How do you
yes,
see
yes,
this?
I can very much relate to that, even at a personal level. I've been told by many, "I told you so," and I've told myself, I should have known better. I should have done this or that. Uh, But I want to ask you, these are all negative counterfactuals, as it were. These are all scenarios in which things went one way, and we think that's the worst case scenario, and we are pointing into a direction that might have been better. Things could have been better if you had listened to me, if you had done as I do. But aren't there also positive counterfactuals, in the sense that I could tell you this is not for "I told you so" type of situations, but rather as a consolation, maybe, or as a words of comfort? I could tell you, well, things could have been much worse. You used it in the big one at the beginning. Someone could say to Narendra Modi, well, 10 people are dead, but you have postponed or averted an international conflict. You have averted war by this visit. I think there are also situations in which a counterfactual argument has a positive result.
Well, it could be one of the uses is very common is when you lose somebody. When you lose somebody, let's say a person was sick or a person, it's very common to say he's better now, or she's now in a better place. They don't suffer anymore. Remember, we know people are suffering, and as nostalgia is running away from suffering, and that person, it's very common to you to tell you that that person is now in a better place. Is not suffering anymore. So that is also a kind of positive counterfactual. You again, the question is that does it help? That's another issue. Some people do, some people don't. But there is even, we talked about guilt in one of our in several of our videos, and guilt. One of the best ways to deal with guilt, one probably, if it's not the best of them all, is going to somebody else and what I call the court of appeals, and tell the person the case. I was driving and this person jumped in front of me, and he's injured, and I feel very guilty about it. And the person will tell you, wait, he jumped in front of you. What are you supposed to do? To have a helicopter jump on top of him? This is normal. That person should have the responsibility, not you. So when you talked about that, you are getting a counterfactual, a positive one. That person should have known better. He should have done this or should have done that. But maybe if I would stay home, I would not have run over him. He would not be injured. Yes, or why we should stay home all your life. In that case, not moving. Okay, that's it. You never move again, and then there is no risk. This is life, and life. I'm giving you arguments I heard. We all heard. Yes. And this is the counterpart for the negative one.
So in either in any of these directions, for better or worse, what we see is arguments that go further and further away from facts. That's their counterfactual aspect. But as you present them, it seems as if they could go on forever. they could keep on diverging from what actually happened endlessly. There's a risk for endless regress once you start denying facts. Once you start imagining what might have happened if what actually happened hadn't happened. So, in a way, this is part of the illusionary world you claim we live in, isn't it? This is part of the problem from a disillusionist point of view.
Well, yes. In fact, I can tell you that when people come to me sometimes with a counterfactual argument, I immediately answer, if my grandmother, when you come with the word if my grandmother had wheels, I would have had a bus instead of a grandmother. The if argument in the past is useless. Disillusionism means those are the facts, and you are dealing with facts. The rest is not important. The rest happens in your head. Now, I have to explain that there are different people who deal with this in a different way. We have you have people who have for example, they have a different disposition. Yes, they have a different willingness. Some people have a tendency, because they are afraid of counterfactuals, not to make decisions. You go with them to a restaurant and they would look at the menu for the next half an hour. Yes, until they make a decision. And when they make a decision and the meat comes, it says, the meat is not so good. I should have asked for the chicken. These people have a relationship. They have afraid of counterfactuals. Okay. Other people say, okay, listen, I make a decision and that's it, and I live with it. And these people have a different kind of willingness. This is how they were born. Yes, it's not it's not like an ability. It's not like you have an ability to run, or you have an ability to drive, or you have an ability to play basketball, whatever. That's an ability. I'm talking about a willingness that wanted to play basketball. You want to run, that willingness. And those people have a certain way to deal with certain suffering, and they run away. Remember, all this is misalgic. I ran away from suffering. Which is worse, making a decision and getting a counterfactual, or not making a decision and then staying there for the next 2 hours looking at the menu? What is worse? Well, depending to whom.
Very interesting. I'm sure we'll come back to this type of matters, but for today, I think it's enough to take this from a bit of news somewhere in the Indian subcontinent. Thank you.
Next week.
See you next time.
See you next week.
If you enjoyed the video, please like it, comment and subscribe.